What I am is optimistic that the ceasefire is going to hold and that we can actually build a better future in the entire Middle East.
Vice President Vance speaking in Israel this morning. Welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Wednesday, October 22nd, 2025, the 295th day of the year.
We have a very, very tough task ahead of us, which is to disarm Hamas, but rebuild Gaza to make life better for the people in Gaza, but also to ensure that Hamas is no longer a threat to our friends in Israel. I think that we have an opportunity to do something really historic, so we're going to keep working at it with all of our friends in the Israeli government.
The vice president is in Israel with Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Special Envoy Steve Witkoff, and the president's son-in-law Jared Kushner, all who helped broker the ceasefire. While the administration is working on the war in the Middle East, President Trump's meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin about ending the war in Ukraine has been put on hold. Bianca De La Garza spoke about it with former Undersecretary of Defense Robert Wilkie, and then we'll hear some of President Trump's monologue from yesterday's senators' luncheon at the White House.
All right, breaking within the past hour, the Budapest meeting between President Trump and with Putin and President Trump has been put on hold after Rubio speaks with Lavrov. But we also have a little bit of an update. Volodymyr Zelensky, who met with President Trump, is now getting Patriot air defense missiles, a little bit of a boost there. So where do things stand when it comes to the momentum here? I'm pleased to bring in Robert Wilkie, who is the chair at the Center of the National Security of America First Policy Institute and the former Undersecretary of Defense, former Secretary of Veterans Affairs. Great to have you, Secretary Wilkie. This was supposed to be on track in Budapest, but now it is on hold after the Rubio-Lavrov call. I mean, it may still be scheduled. Obviously, this has been one of the hardest conflicts, if not the hardest conflict for President Trump to solve. Your reaction to the Budapest meeting being put at least on hold for now.
Right. Well, I'm not surprised. I mean, Putin's negotiating position is I'll keep what I have and then I'll take what you have. And this is the same guy who has rebuffed 3 previous ceasefire offers from the president, while Zelensky has accepted those. What he has also rejected is the Trump starting position that we negotiate from what we call the line of contact, where the forces stand now. And remember that the Russians' vaunted summer offensive yielded land about the size of the District of Columbia, between 80 and 100 square miles, at the loss of hundreds of thousands of troops. So Putin, again, is playing this game. He's playing with the wrong people. And as you just reported, now the Patriot systems are flowing, not just from the U.S., but from Israel, from the Danes, from the Dutch. So Zelensky's getting strong.
So let me ask you, it did seem that, when this call happened with President Trump and Putin last week, and there was talk that there'd be Budapest and there'd also be, Marco Rubio has said to meet Lavrov this week, Secretary Wilkie, as you know, that's off as well. But even the Senate said, well, we might hold off on some sanctions for oil because they wanted to give this a chance. They were hoping that Putin was not, stalling and playing a game with President Trump, as you said, who is not going to have any of it. Right. So now I think the sanctions are back on the table, perhaps. I mean, that's the lever here, and India is a part of it. So is Europe. Your final thoughts? Yeah,
they should be. They should be. The United States and Europe should finally say enough is enough. And, I think Zelensky, if he gets those Tomahawks, will launch on Russian energy infrastructure to remind the Russian people what the Russian winter is like. Because, Putin has been hitting civilian targets. He just hit a farmer's market this weekend, and he's been hitting Ukraine's electric grid. So that's where we are headed as we move into the horrible effects of the traditional Russian winter.
Former Undersecretary of Defense and former Secretary of Veteran Affairs, Robert Wilkie on Newsline with Bianca De La Garza. That's weekdays at noon. Great way to get caught up on what's going on during your lunch hour. Prior to that Budapest meeting being postponed, President Trump, you may recall, decided to hold off on sending the Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. But this is the second or maybe the third time now that Putin is basically pulling Trump's chain, right? All right, here's some of what the president said yesterday in the Senate Rose Garden luncheon.
So I just want to say it's great to be with you. And when we're finished later on, we're going to have a little quick lunch, and they do great food at the White House. And this is used sometimes for evening, where we've had some incredible people for the evening, and some of the big foreign leaders have been coming. And most excitingly, on the other side, you see the fence and the wall. We're building a world-class ballroom. You know, for 150 years, they've wanted a ballroom here. We don't have a ballroom. We have a little cocktail area, but we don't have a ballroom. The East Room, it's called, is a very small cocktail area. It holds about 88 people if it's tight. And I said, if I do this again, I'm going to get a ballroom built, and we're putting up our own money. The government is paying for nothing. You probably hear the beautiful sound of construction to the back. You hear that sound? Oh, that's music to my ears. I love that sound. Other people don't like it. I love it, Josh. I think when I hear that sound, it reminds me of money. In this case, it reminds me of lack of money because I'm paying for it, so it's the opposite. But it's going to be one of the most beautiful ballrooms anywhere in the world, and it's going to be able to take care of tremendous things. When you have, as an example, I'm going to see President Xi in 2 weeks. I'm going over to South Korea. We're going to meet in South Korea. We're going to talk about a lot of things. They want to discuss the fact that they're paying 157% tariff. It's a little higher than they thought. And we're doing very well. I think we're going to do well in that negotiation. We've done well, as you know, with Japan, with South Korea, with Europe. The European nations got together. We made a deal. And it was all based without the tariffs. You could have never made the deal. I'll tell you what, tariffs equal national security. Remember that. Tariffs equal national security. You got to remember that. And they also equal wealth for our nation, because we've taken in hundreds of billions of dollars in a very friendly manner, given to us by nations that used to take it from us. And they used tariffs on us. We never used it on them because we were foolish, or we were led by people that weren't business people. But it really does. It equals national security. And I wouldn't have put out, I mentioned 8 wars, 9 coming. Of the 8, 5 were based solely on trade and tariffs.
President Trump speaking in the Rose Garden yesterday, the Rose Garden that now has a big new patio, reaffirming his upcoming meeting with the president of China at a summit in South Korea later this month, and discussing the construction now at the White House, among other things. Today, the president is hosting a late afternoon meeting with the Secretary General of NATO. Outside of that, nothing else other than the daily briefing on his calendar, but that has never kept him from having a busy day. Either way, we'll be all over. And it's day 22 of the government shutdown. Let's go to Frontline with Carl Higbie and Kentucky Senator Rand Paul, who was not at yesterday's Rose Garden luncheon.
Senator, you are not invited to today's lunch. You posted on X. I was actually invited to the White House. I was not invited to the White House lunch today, but that's okay. I had a previously scheduled Liberty Caucus lunch with Rep. Thomas Massie. Sir, you're a massive fiscal hawk, which I love. But was that why you weren't invited to sit next to Lindsey Graham?
You know, I don't know why I wasn't invited, but it's good to know that I was still on the mind of the president. And even though I wasn't there, he was still thinking about me. Because I am maybe, you know, a persistent critic of overspending. You know, right now the government shut down, but there are 2 spending alternatives. The Republican spending alternative, which would add about $2 trillion in debt next year, and the Democrat perspective, which would add $3 trillion. So it isn't that I'm for one or the other. I'm for neither. I think both of them add too much debt. So what I have proposed is something called the penny plan budget, that would balance the budget over about a 5-year period. And I think that is a valid and viable and really should be the third option.
Yeah, I mean, if it was me, I would be firm on the don't spend more money than you take in ever, but you're very reasonable at 5 years. So how long do you think this thing's going to be closed, sir?
I think it opens up pretty soon, and the reason is this. The Republican proposal, the continuing resolution, is the Biden spending levels from December of 2024. So as Biden was leaving office, all of the Democrats voted for the Biden spending levels. They were renewed in March of this year, and now they're identical. So this is an identical bill to something all of the Democrats voted for in December of 2024. So it's hard really to understand any logic why the Democrats wouldn't ultimately vote for this. So typically the way these things end is the big government Republicans vote for the spending with most of the Democrats. And so right now they're resisting, but I think their resolve will weaken over time, particularly as it's pointed out that they've all voted for this spending level in December of last year.
Well, the other thing, too, is we're still more than double the spending levels of Barack Obama's time. So, take that as you will. All right. Remember, I got to get your take on this, sir. Speaking of the spending and the budget and all these things, we were promised an audit of the Federal Reserve and the gold in Fort Knox. What the heck ever happened to that?
I'm still fighting for that. It's hard enough just to get a vote. We have had a vote in the last couple of years on auditing the Fed, and we've lost that vote. We get most of the Republicans. I think I got a little over 40 Republicans, and I lost 5 or 10 Republicans. I got 1 or 2 Democrats. So we don't have the votes to pass the legislation to audit the Fed, but it's something I continue to fight for. President Trump did support the issue as a candidate, and I think would still sign the legislation if we were able to get it to his desk. But the problem is we need a little more Democrat support, and we need more unity on the Republican side for it. On the Fort Knox, I've been trying to go down there and see the gold for 14 years. I got permission a few years ago. You have to get the Secretary of the Treasury to approve it, and he or she has to attend. So I had it all set up. They were going to fly down to Kentucky, and lo and behold, they called a week before, and they said, oh, we want to come the following week because we want to see the eclipse. The eclipse is coming through there at the same time, and we thought it'd be great to see the gold and the eclipse at the same time. And I said, I'm going to be out of the country next week. I can't do it. So I didn't get to go down. You may be right. You may be right. But I want an assay test and a quantity count to all of it, and I want to see it. And so we're still working on it, and I've asked the Trump administration to coordinate this. I haven't gotten a response. So we've sent them another letter, and maybe they were discussing this when I wasn't invited today.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll invite me to Fort Knox since I'm not invited to the White House anymore. Maybe they'll invite me to Fort Knox to make up for it. I don't know, but I am still fighting to get it done.
Sir, despite your disagreements with Trump on certain things, I hold you in high regards for your commitment to fiscal sanity, at least.
Host Carl Higbee with Republican Senator Rand Paul. Scott Bessent is the Secretary of Treasury and would have to accompany the senator and anyone else on a visit to Fort Knox, which is in Rand Paul's home state of Kentucky. I totally agree with him. I would love to see the gold in Fort Knox, wouldn't you? Next up, Rob Schmidt spoke with Border Czar Tom Homan about the violence and continued threat against ICE agents. This starts with a clip of L.A. Mayor Karen Bass. Drop the B.
We know that this has impacted undocumented immigrants who in Los Angeles are Angelenos because we don't make the distinction. They are neighbors and workers contributing to our city, and they continue to be swept up in these actions, denied their rights, and subjected to fear and uncertainty without legal protection.
There's no distinction between citizens of Los Angeles and illegal immigrants in the mayor's mind. And Tom Homan is a border czar and joins us now, sir. Good to have you back on. We've said it a million times. You can't have a welfare state, especially like California, and also open borders together. It's a one-way ticket to a collapsing and bankrupt society. But I guess don't tell the mayor that.
Yeah, well, she just rewrote federal law, apparently, because there's illegal aliens that are defined in federal statutes. They're defined in Title 8 United States Code. I mean, illegal aliens, a legal term, and they're in the United States. And if they're in the country legally, they should be afraid. They should be uncomfortable. It's not okay to be in this country illegally. It's not okay to enter this country legally. It's a crime. So she simply, is ignoring what federal statute says. And look, bottom line is, ICE is concentrating on public safety threats and national security threats. The data clearly shows it, and that's something they don't want to talk about. She ought to be thanking ICE for making L.A. safer, because that's exactly what they're doing. And as far as the judge in Chicago, I mean, we'll win that on appeal, because warrantless searches are allowed in federal law. Illegal aliens are likely to abscond. We've been arresting illegal aliens without warrants for decades. There's an administrative warrant that's part of the package, but we don't need a criminal warrant to arrest illegal aliens that's like to abscond. We take them in custody, then we go to the judicial proceedings. We're not going to stop doing what we're doing, and we'll win that on appeal.
Last week, we had a guy named Eduardo Aguilar, an illegal, arrested after posting on TikTok soliciting the murder of your ICE agents. He wrote in Spanish, 10 dudes in Dallas with determination who aren't afraid to, and then in 2 skull emojis, meaning to kill, offering $10,000 for each federal agent. When he was arrested, he had a 9mm loaded handgun on him. This is where we're at. And I wonder how much of this do you think is coming from cartels and how much of it's just coming from the rhetoric that we've seen here from the left?
Well, I think it's both. I think the cartels are hurting right now because we've got the most secure border in the history of this nation, which hurts their bottom line. They've made record amounts of money smuggling dope, smuggling drugs across the country under the Biden administration, sex trafficking women and children, and alien smuggling. So now that border's secure, they're hurting. So the cartels are involved with, taking revenge on ICE and using internal gangs in the largest cities of this nation to attack ICE officers. But I think it's the cartels, but I also think it's the rhetoric, especially from elected mayors, elected governors, and elected congresspeople who want to compare ICE to terrorists and the Nazis. And, when that's the far fringe on the left that become violent against ICE, they feel emboldened when the United States senator or a congressperson or a governor says ICE are Nazis and they're racist. That emboldens them to take more action against ICE officers. And that's why the threats up and the attacks are up over 1,000%. And look, I thought after numerous shootings in Texas where illegal alien was killed, a person was killed shooting at a border patrol facility, a couple of detainees were killed, an officer was shot in the neck at one of the detention facilities. I thought maybe the rhetoric would tap down after to see what's happening because of that rhetoric. But no, they're not pulling back out. They continue to do it. And this weekend at the No Kings protest, I watched more of the rhetoric. They've lost their minds. And I'm telling you, the bloodshed's not over if we don't address the rhetoric. I would think first of all, anybody wants to protest ICE, you don't like what ICE is doing, then go up in Congress and protest them because they wrote the law that ICE is enforcing. Congress enacts the law, ICE is enforcing the law. So you don't like what they're doing? Yell at Congress. They wrote the law. So we got to put things in perspective. But ICE officers, again, the vast majority of the people they arrested public safety threats, and we're going to keep doing it.
Let me translate that for you. The vast majority of the people ICE is arresting are public safety threats, and we're going to keep doing it. That's Borders Czar Tom Homan on Rob Schmitt tonight. If you missed yesterday's Newsmax Daily, by the way, I encourage you to go listen to it because it featured 2 great segments with Rob Schmitt. One on this very subject with Benny Johnson, host of The Benny Show, and another with New York mayoral candidate Curtis Sliwa. There's another heated and very expensive mayoral race happening right next door to New York, in New Jersey, where Democrat Mikey Sherrill is facing Republican Jack Ciattarelli. National Report spoke with a New Jersey Democrat who is crossing party lines now to support the Republican candidate.
James P. Dodd, the mayor of Dover, New Jersey. So, Mayor, welcome, and thanks so much for coming on. You're kind of representing an interesting part of the state here, represented by Mikey Sherrill. Is that right? Can you tell us what led to you supporting her opponent?
Sure. Good morning. I appreciate this opportunity to come on and explain my position here. I'm supporting Jack Ciattarelli because he has a strong focus on property tax reform in the state of New Jersey. People can't even afford to live in New Jersey anymore. You certainly can't afford to retire here. Jack has a very strong commitment to business growth here in our state. As a small business owner, I know myself how hard it is to run a small business. I have a small business with 10 employees, and it's very difficult. We want to encourage business growth in our state. Mikey Sherrill, I did support her in the very beginning. Unfortunately, Mikey has taken a turn, in my opinion. When you look at her voting record, it's very disturbing that you look at did not vote, did not vote, did not vote, did not vote. And to me, it's very important that you take a stance. I'm taking a difficult stance here today in supporting Jack Ciattarelli because I think he's right for the state of New Jersey. We have to change what we've been doing for the last 8 years in our state. The state budget has significantly increased, affecting local municipalities. We need tax reform in our state because we can't afford, small municipalities can't afford to continue raising taxes on the backs of residents and homeowners in our state. And so things have to change here. We need somebody that has fiscal responsibility. They can focus on fiscal responsibility and accountability. And so, yes, I am crossing party lines and I am supporting Jack Ciattarelli.
All right. Again, you are taking a risk in pointing that out. It is very rare that you see a Democrat cross the aisle, at least these days, for fear of repercussions. Are there political fears that you're wading through despite making this decision?
Absolutely. There's attacks all over social media, but that's okay. I need to stand up for what I believe in. And that goes back to exactly what I just said about Congresswoman Cheryl. Take a stance. I'm very disappointed in her to vote against the Laken Riley Act. I'm very disappointed in Mikey Sherman when she came out and endorsed Namdani. In New York City, he's a socialist. And so, people need to stop the partisan politics and do what's right for your towns, your communities, and our state. We need to survive here. We cannot continue to be the highest tax state in the country. It's out of control, and we need to bring it back in.
Well, there you go. Common sense. Imagine that. We need to take a stance. Mikey Sherrill voted against the Laken Riley Act, he said. End of story right there. And she is supporting Zohran Mamdani in the New York race. That's James Dodd, Democrat mayor of Dover, New Jersey, on National Report with Emma Rechenberg and Sean Kreisman. We'll wrap it up with Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee, who said in a news conference yesterday that the committee is still working through the shutdown and working to bring President Bill Clinton in for a deposition on Jeffrey Epstein as they continue their investigation into the Epstein investigation.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. As Speaker Johnson already said, today marks the 21st day of the Schumer shutdown. Democrats' political games are hurting hardworking Americans. This week, essential federal workers won't receive their paychecks because Democrats voted against paying them. That includes Border Patrol, CBP agents, TSA, FAA staff, DOD civilians, FEMA responders, and Capitol Police officers. The overwhelming majority of Americans oppose this Democrat shutdown. Democrats know it, so they're trying to distract from the fact that they shut down the government by pushing a false narrative about President Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. Let me be clear. No one is protecting Epstein or his associates. The House Oversight Committee is conducting a thorough review of the federal government's handling of the Epstein investigation, one that goes far beyond the discharge petition the legacy media is obsessed with. To date, the Oversight Committee has released over 43,000 pages of documents and issued 13 subpoenas. We've conducted a deposition with former U.S. Attorney General Bill Barr and a transcribed interview with former U.S. Labor Secretary Alex Acosta. I don't think I need to remind anyone in here, they are both Republicans and both former cabinet secretaries in the Trump administration. And guess what? Those interviews completely debunk the Democrat smear against President Trump. Barr stated that there was no evidence that President Trump was involved in Epstein's criminal activity. Acosta confirmed there was no contact with President Trump during the Florida case. No link, no conversations, nothing. Despite these facts, Democrats, especially Ranking Member Garcia, continue to spread lies about President Trump. And they are lies. They're infected with an incurable case of Trump derangement syndrome. Oversight Committee Democrats post daily about Epstein. In fact, they've posted or reposted about Epstein nearly 60 times on X since the shutdown began. You know how many times they posted about essential federal workers not receiving paychecks because they voted against funding the government? Once. They've posted about that once on the Democrat Oversight Committee and over 60 times about Epstein. You see where their priorities are. Let's be clear. Democrats don't care about transparency or accountability in this matter. The evidence we've gathered does not implicate President Trump in any way. Public reporting, survivor testimony, and official documents show that Bill Clinton had far closer ties to Epstein. We're working to bring former President Clinton in for a deposition, but the Democrats aren't helping one bit. You would think, since we've already brought two former Trump cabinet secretaries in, they would be willing to bring in a Democrat who's had publicly a far closer relationship with especially Maxwell and Epstein. So why is that? That's a question every reporter should be asking Ranking Member Garcia and every Democrat on the committee. Why are you helping to bring Bill Clinton in for an interview and deposition just like we brought in Barr and Acosta? The Oversight Committee remains committed to accountability and transparency for the American people and for Epstein's victims. Our investigation has not stopped during this shutdown. We've released more documents just this past Friday. Democrats need to stop playing games and vote to reopen the government.
Congressman James Comer, chair of the House Oversight and Accountability Committee. Former Labor Secretary Alex Acosta also worked as an attorney for Donald Trump prior to him becoming president. So you assume they're pretty friendly, right? However, we know Bill Barr, Fred Flintstone, is no fan of President Trump's. As we inch up on Halloween, don't forget about the treat that Webroot is offering Newsmax Daily listeners to find the tricks of cyber criminals. The only thing more scary than Halloween is cyber crime. You protect your house, your car, your health. You have insurance for almost everything, your dog. But most people don't protect themselves from cyber criminals. From text scams to phishing emails to cyber attacks, it seems like every day criminals have a new trick. Webroot Total Protection Package has lightning-fast antivirus protection, identity theft protection with dark web monitoring, secure VPN, and unlimited cloud backup. Webroot Total Protection offers up to $1 million in fraud expense reimbursement. They have 24/7 U.S.-based customer service, which is awesome. If you go read their reviews, there's a lot of great reviews about their customer service as well as the product. And they have new text scam detection as well. You can get 60% off Webroot Total Protection at webroot.com/Newsmax. 60% off this month at webroot.com/Newsmax. Do not wait. Get 60% off at webroot.com/Newsmax. So the president is hosting the NATO secretary at the White House late this afternoon. The vice president is in Israel. It's day 22 of the government shutdown. The White House is under construction. And who knows what else? Keep up with it all on Newsmax, N2, and at Newsmax.com. The news now starts each and every morning at 6 Eastern with Alex Kramer on Wake Up America Early Edition, followed by Wake Up America, National Report, Newsline at noon with Bianca, as I mentioned, American Agenda, Greta Van Susteren, The Chris Salcedo Show, Carl Higbee, Rob Schmidt tonight, Finnerty at 8, Greg Kelly, and much, much more. I'm Tony Marino. Enjoy the rest of your Wednesday. It's National Nut Day, by the way, celebrating the nutritional value and benefits of something that tastes good and is actually good for you. So eat some nuts and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.